policy barriers in place. We've seen China limit access to technology through their regulatory approval processes. And we've even seen the EU recently put in place a farm to fork strategy that has not matched with US policy. So we've seen a lot of risk and challenge, but I'm very excited about the opportunities that sit in front of us from innovation and opportunity. Innovation is the solution and not the problem. And so it's what we do, it's what you do in the labs every day that give us the ability to respond to every one of those risks that I just mentioned. It's the policy work that folks like those of us on the stage do on Capitol Hill every day. But most importantly, it's the kinds of systems. So for example, when we travel abroad, we have the ability to talk about the research and the opportunity that you all bring every day. We've also got incredible systems such as the extension system that's typically held up as the gold standard all around the globe as ways to teach and show others how to make more with less, how to produce on their farms. It's those training institutions. And so while I do mention some of those risks, I'm very optimistic about the opportunities that lie in front of us. And as we approach not only each year, but broader perspective, the Farm Bill policy, there's an opportunity through the Farm Bill, this upcoming Farm Bill policy, for us all to identify what those needs and gaps are and make recommendations on what the U.S. should be doing going forward to help, again, feed the world. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other panelists care to add a comment? If not, we'll go to the next question. Okay, Jane, I have one for you. What role does public research play in new production or processing approaches?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And just, I would add to what Cara said about trade. So when you think about wheat, it's about 45 million acres of wheat that are grown in the U.S. Half of that is exported, and then half goes through the milling process. So to maintain a viable wheat industry, trade is just essential, and we're finding continual sort of non-tariff barriers to trade that are slowing down exports. And it's something beyond the big biotech issues, just these little issues are also create problems. But on new production, you know, I really see the university system, you guys are the early warning system, and we are seeing an increasing number of diseases, pests, and other threats to production and crop production. And I'll give you a terrific example also of real unity between universities working together to solve problems. And that is really so critical for the success of agriculture and also the food industry. So the U.S. Wheat and Barley Scab Initiative is a $15 million grant project. Essentially, the issues around vomitoxin and fusarium head blight, it hit the U.S. in 1997 and swept through the country, and there was no solutions. And since 1997, with just $15 million a year, we've now grown that program to having over 100 projects and 30 universities working together. And we now have resistant varieties, we have fungicides that we know how to use. We have the Extension Service puts out an early warning system all through the growing season to let farmers know when they need to, when conditions are right, when they need to be spraying. It is this massive collective effort. And when you think about it, that $15 million, you guys are matching that money from your university budgets. And collectively, I can't even imagine how much money altogether has gone in, but it's really been critical for our industry. And as you guys know, there are plenty of other threats out there, and we need to think about how we can work collectively across many different growing regions to solve them. But we're also, from the milling side, you know, we're part of the food industry. And so one of the areas, as you guys know, there's been a tremendous attacks against carbohydrates, gluten, all of those things. And it's really been university scientists that have helped to show that carbs are not bad for you. Everybody loves carbs, right? We certainly learned that in the pandemic, that when you're looking for comfort food, you go to carbs. that university research has been really essential for us to be able to continue to message to consumers. It's okay to eat carbs. They're really part of a healthy diet. And, whole wheat is good for fiber, so that's really important. And then the last thing I would say is food safety is the other thing that's critical for the industry. And again, we've relied on university researchers to help across the board to help us understand where the threats are in the food supply chain and then try to help address them. So all of these there's so many different components that you guys are touching that help industry and agriculture succeed.
Bob, if I could just make a few extra comments here. I like Jane's approach to the early warning system. I think that's pretty accurate, especially when you look at the cattle industry and all the issues we have faced over time. The one thing that keeps me up at night is foot and mouth disease, FMD. I lose more sleep to that than anything else that we're dealing with right now as an industry. But from a response standpoint, I know we're prepared because a lot of the great work that has been done by many of you here. So it's just a matter of being able to take what you have provided us and actually implement it when it happens again, not if it happens again, but when it happens again. And Jane talked a little bit about innovation. I think innovation has been that hallmark of land-grant university research for so long. And innovation is important, but I also want to reinforce how important it is for you to continue to help us just measure and quantify the great work that we're already doing. When you look at the topic of sustainability, and the amount of time that we have spent trying to showcase what we're doing on farms and ranches today, a lot of that is due to you helping us quantify what's really going on farms and ranches, rather than what United Nations sometimes wants to tell us is going on farms and ranches. So we can't forget that, yes, innovation is important, but also continuing to quantify the success of practices that are already in place on farms and ranches also needs to be a big part of your work moving forward.
Great, thanks. Paula, while I've got the mic, a question for you on what role do you see for cooperative extension in the agricultural economy?
As you look at cooperative extension, from my viewpoint, you can't have research without extension, and vice versa. Cooperative extension is so incredibly important to the success of American agriculture. And while, yes, we have fewer county agents out there than we once did, they are no less important than they always have been. Because if we can't get the new information, the new production practices, the results of the research that your universities are creating and putting in place, if we can't get it in the hands of producers, then what good are we doing ourselves in truly trying to improve agriculture and our stewardship of all the resources that have been made available to us? So I believe that extension at the local level, when you look at state livestock specialists, economists, making sure that we maintain and protect the funding for those positions is absolutely essential to the success of all of us in agriculture, but especially for those of us in the cattle business. But we can't put all of that responsibility on you, and we can't necessarily put all of that responsibility on the administration or Capitol Hill. We as agriculture have to own some of that responsibility, and it comes in several, I think, key opportunities. One is being able to get extension in a bigger showcase or spotlight, and through things such as our stockmanship and stewardship program that NCBA has, our Cattleman to Cattleman TV show, looking at different media properties that our association has that gets in the hands of not only cattle producers, but also legislators, policymakers, and being able to showcase a lot of that work, I think, makes people quite comfortable and confident in the work of extension. To be able to show, hey, this is what's going on, and this is how we as producers are benefiting from it. I think a great example is Dr. Ron Gill from Texas A&M University. He's one of many examples out there, but the one that I'll use because of his role as a professor and also a livestock extensive specialist, we've been able to get him a greater exposure nationwide to cattle producers through stockmanship and stewardship, and his ability to showcase and demonstrate low-stress cattle handling and work like that has truly been a game changer for cattle producers in a lot of ways. And that would not have happened if we hadn't taken on the responsibility of helping take the knowledge he has and get it outside of just Texas and on a national scale. So as we look at the importance of extension moving forward, I think it remains a keystone to the overall success of the land grant mission and research, and for us as producers to be able to utilize that great information. But again, we also own a lot of that responsibility to make sure that we're protecting it. And I think as we look at this new farm bill, ensuring that the funds are there for extension moving forward is something that is a priority for NCBA, and I believe will finally be a priority for many of the agriculture groups that are out there.
Thank you, Colin. Any other panelists comments on extension?
I'll just say one comment to complement what Colin was saying is and it tags on to your earlier comment around sustainability. And it's really about the qualifications and the sort of objectivity that comes with extension and your voice within the space to communicate sustainability. Oftentimes, our message as a private enterprise sort of comes across as self-serving. So what are you going to say? You're not sustainable? That's not an option. But I think, so who's there to actually, a credible voice, an objective voice that can really speak to that we can reference, and I think you fall into that. And I think more at the individual level, I mean, we're seeing in specialty crops where the old way of doing things isn't going to cut it. And it's really troubling to see smaller growers who've been doing things a certain way for 20, 30 years across a couple of generations starting to struggle, if not already going out of business. And I think the extensions can really bring that voice to say, you have to change. You have to change. Because it's coming from a place, obviously, that has created value in the past, a very credible voice. And we're seeing oftentimes that stagnation in sort of business philosophy is really what's leading to the small growers going out of business. It's recognition that the old way of doing things may not work going forward.
Great, thanks. So Zach, while you've got the mic, what are some why are practical solutions needed to address the costliest challenges to the ag industry?
Thanks, Bob. I think first, as I think about this question, I'd like to maybe address what practical is, because I mean, obviously we're not in the business of creating conceptual solutions. All of our solutions are practical, but I think it's practical more in the sort of the short term. And as I look at the microcosm that is citrus, I mean, you spent a lot of our energy in new varieties, new cultivars, rootstocks, whatnot, and then obviously our biggest fight is in citrus breeding, where collectively we've probably invested about $1.5 billion as an industry and yet to find a solution for that. So, I mean, those are practical fights, but I think what I'd like to focus on is just more short, and I maybe ground us in where the reality is, and we're seeing enormous margin compression in specialty crops, again, specifically citrus. And a lot of that's just been an explosion in operating costs over the last 3 years. And some of these aren't going to go back, right? I mean, we talked about logistics costs as being something that